Hi, I'm Dr. Kylie Dodsworth, and I'd like to talk to you about bioidentical or natural hormones. We tend to use the term bioidentical, meaning biologically identical, because that means that it's exactly what your own body produces, the same what we call molecule or structure. And to be honest, our body doesn't mind whether it has to manufacture these hormones or whether that's happened outside of the body, provided the end product is the same. So biologically identical hormones can be sourced from a range of different areas. So things like wild yam, you might have heard of that regarding progesterone effects. Wild yam's a tuber, and so it's a plant progesterone that we're talking about there. It's not the same as what our own body produces, so we need some enzymes to just help tweak that a little bit to become exactly what our own body produces. So wild yam's not quite the same as natural progesterone or bioidentical progesterone. But that's one particular way we can source it and then use some enzymes to create this natural hormone. Then things like for making estrogen, that can come from soy products or other things called isoflavones. So there are things that we can use to help make the estrogens. And when we talk about estrogen, it's as if there's one type, because we often just mention estrogen, but there's actually a range of different types of estrogen. And that's one of the benefits with this bioidentical hormone work that we do, is we can use the three main types of estrogen rather than just one type of estrogen. Now that's actually really important, because the way the body manages estrogen is important for our health and our reproduction, but it's also really important for safety. When our body produces estrogen, the one we talk about as being the main estrogen is something called estradiol, or E2. So that one we make and we can measure in our blood test, and it's the one that's actually mimicked by things like the contraceptive pill or by standard HRT, because it's the one that does most of the work in the body that we attribute towards estrogen. However, it's only about 10% of what we make in our body. E1 is called estrone. It's a very strong estrogen as well, and it has quite a lot to do with breast architecture and structure. We don't really need much of that one. We don't want to overstimulate the breasts, and it's only a small amount of what the body produces. So 10% here, 10% here, that leaves 80% for E3. That one's called estriol. Now E3 is actually a very weak estrogen. What that means is, why would you make 80% of something if it's really very weak? We do that very deliberately because that means it can occupy 80% of the receptors in our body for estrogen. And that only leaves a small amount of receptors available for the strong stimulators. So E3 is like the protector or the moderator of how these estrogens work in our body. Now again, nature never does anything by accident. If we're making 80% of this particular hormone, it means it's really important. If people do standard HRT management, they either are given 100% E2 or 50% E2, 50% E1 as a horse type estrogen. Whereas if we're doing the natural hormones, the bioidentical hormones, we'll be using it in a formulation of 80% E3 and probably 20% E2, or you can do a mixed 10-10 here. I just don't tend to use E1 particularly for people because we don't want any extra stimulation of the breast tissues. So bioidentical estrogens allow us to work with the normal ratios of the body rather than a one-size-fits-all. So besides progesterone and the estrogens, we can also use natural testosterone, and there's another hormone called DHEA that we make in what's called the adrenal glands. So we can look at those sorts of hormones and balancing and tailoring those hormones to meet what your body needs. So each of those hormone levels can be measured, and then we can combine those into a cream or a little lozenge that dissolves in the mouth, and then we can monitor what that dose has done for you, and then we can tweak and tailor those measurements again. So the idea of using bioidentical or natural hormones is that we're just giving the body what it needs in the right balance to allow for normal function. What we do need to also be aware of is the fact that the female hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are made in the ovaries, and we associate them with the feminine sides as far as breasts and reproduction. And for men, we look at testosterone and perhaps the DHEA in there as well. But the reality is that we have receptors, as in sites for these hormones to work on, throughout our body. They're not just in the reproductive areas. We've got receptors in our brain, in our blood vessel walls, in our bones, skin and hair cells. There's all sorts of parts of our body that need these hormones. They've got receptors for these hormones because they have a function to facilitate how those parts of our body work. So rebalancing hormones is not just about menopause, it's not just about structure and testosterone levels, it's about healthy balance of brain, healthy balance of bones, healthy cardiovascular system. It's about skin, hair, how do we feel in our cells. So there's a general well-being that we're after when we're looking at balancing out those hormones. So the idea of using bioidentical or natural hormones is to be able to tailor it to match what your body needs, to facilitate all of those different functions in your body and to ensure you're in the right balance. So that helps us to create better health. So if you've got any questions, you can find me at the website below. I'm Dr. Kylie Dodsworth. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.